While the Elden Ring DLC and excitement for Metroid Prime 4 might be consuming your summer game sessions, we've got Black Myth Wukong over here, cooking, sizzling staff length in a massive pool of hype sauce, ready to whip you into a frenzy when it releases later this summer. And with publications left and right getting around 2 hours to hack away at this finally seasoned Unreal Engine 5 action RPG showstopper, along with even more insight into the content of the game, there's no better time than now to go over why Black Myth Wukong should be the next big game for you to close off the summer season. We've heard a lot of awesome things about this game, from its combat to its progression, level design, and more, and with new insight into how content-rich this game is likely to be, it's time to treat yourself to a video outlining everything you need to know about this game and the numerous areas this game is both similar to and different from the Souls-like genre that it's often compared to. The hype is through the roof, extending far past Sun Wukong's staff here, and if you're dead set on getting the game when it launches on August 20th, or are on the fence, or staff, of picking it up, consider entering into my Black Myth Wukong Digital Deluxe Edition giveaway. This edition includes not only the base game, but a number of cosmetic and armor pieces to help you conquer Chinese mythology's deadliest Yao Guai. This giveaway is open to anyone, so if you've got a beating pulse and you live on planet Earth, consider entering the giveaway, and know that the game is only available at launch for the PC and PS5, so if you're an Xbox player, unfortunately the game will not be available at launch. For PC and PS5 players, consider testing your luck here in this giveaway, with all information about the giveaway linked in the description. With that out of the way, let's first get you all loosely familiar with the story and setting before getting into the juicy gameplay. While much of Black Myth Wukong's story remains under wraps, we do know that the game follows the tale of the Monkey King from the 16th century Chinese novel Journey to the West. For those unfamiliar with said novel, it tells the tale of Tang Sanzang, a Buddhist monk who travels to India from China to obtain sacred texts, reflecting on a number of ancient Chinese cultural aspects from folk religion, mythology, and philosophy, along with elements of Confucianism, Taoism, and Buddhism being present throughout. The novel served as a metaphor for the spiritual quest of achieving enlightenment and the cooperation from allied pupils to achieve it. And the novel has since been recognized as some of the most defining literature to have emerged from China and East Asia, with the character Sun Wukong, known as the Monkey King, being one of the novel's defining characters. Having been trapped under a mountain by Buddha for his mischievous doings, Sun Wukong finds himself as Tang Sanzang's bodyguard, overcoming a number of trials and obstacles, where he eventually reaches true enlightenment, where the Monkey King would become a godlike figure, demonstrating incredible feats of physical strength. One of these more notable strengths of the Monkey King was his ability to manifest a number of clones of himself, subtly referenced in the gameplay of Black Myth Wukong when a perfect dodge reveals a clone of the character frozen in place from the moment the dodge was executed. How the game's story diverges from the novel in its totality, of course, remains unclear until we have the game in our hands. But what is clear is that this game definitely does showcase a different take on this well-known story, as evidenced by the game's title being named Black Myth. According to the game's website, the developers have this to say regarding the game's story. The story of Wukong tells more than Wukong himself. The monkey is the leading role for sure, but he is still a small part of the whole vivid world. There are plenty of intriguing characters and thought-provoking dialogues in Journey to the West, not to mention the darkness veiled. We applaud when Wukong defeats these so-called villains, but who are they indeed? Some players well-versed with Journey to the West claim that the Wukong in this game is but a stray clone of the Monkey King, removed from the original Monkey King that we recognize from the novel, as some enemies and boss figures within the game claim that the player character is, quote, another monkey. With the mighty Monkey King himself being notable not only for his incredible strength, but also his cloning abilities, some are theorizing that perhaps we play as one of these clones as a doppelganger, with the plot potentially revolving around the reunification of these two Monkey Kings. Absolutely fascinating stuff, and regardless of your familiarity with Journey to the West, there is likely a gripping narrative to be told here in Black Myth Wukong, as the incredible presentation of the game with Unreal Engine 5's wizardry looks to be pulling off some of the most detailed character models and environments yet. While the solid and often forgotten Enslaved Odyssey to the West may have been one of the other single-player action games that had players take control of the mighty Monkey King, Black Myth Wukong marks the return to the character and represents yet another take on Journey to the West in video game form. This time with a massive budget, squeezing out some of the most incredible graphics we've seen grace the video game industry with gripping gameplay that appeals to fans of Soulslikes and action RPG players alike. It's time to get into the gameplay of this upcoming behemoth, and well, there is a lot to talk about here in this department. From the various trailers we've seen throughout the years, many of us were quite convinced that this game represented yet another studio's jab at the Soulsborne genre, with gameplay showcasing staples of that genre, like methodically timed attacks and dodges, intense bouts with massive, towering bosses, a stamina meter to keep tabs on, a Souls-like experience system, healing gourds used to replenish health, and bonfire-like resting points serving as safe havens to get your bearings before heading out deeper into the daunting challenges that are likely to come. If any of these numerous previews of the game from the recent Summer Game Fest are of any indication, it seems like the consensus is that while Black Myth Wukong certainly contains numerous elements of the Souls-like genre, that the game is more like an action RPG more in line with games like Stellar Blade and even the more recent God of War games. While those who have played the game remark that the game certainly can be tough as nails, they all unanimously have stated that the game is slightly easier than Souls-like games, with many aspects of Black Myth Wukong being less intimidating with more generous gameplay. Let's get into that. Alright, let's first talk gameplay and progression here. Gameplay revolves around the use of Wukong's primary weapon, the staff. This staff is your main way of dishing out damage and can be customized and upgraded throughout the game, and even contains 3 stances that alters the attacks of this weapon, of which we will touch up on later. Like Stellar Blade and God of War, Wukong has both a light and heavy attack, with gameplay here being more about aggression, with unleashing a flurry of quick attacks and perfect dodges over blocking and attacking. In fact, there is no block button to speak of, with the left bumper or L1 serving as a way to reflect incoming projectiles as Wukong rapidly rotates his staff to prevent incoming projectile damage. While not entirely similar to it, this game is most similar to Bloodborne when compared to the Souls-like genre in the sense that Bloodborne is all about laying on the offense, with dodging being your only true means of staying untouched. With those who played Black Myth Wukong, they quickly remarked that the heavy attack was almost useless with the default stance, unless the player had accrued enough focus where the heavy attack actually becomes devastating. So, in Black Myth Wukong, focus is a resource gained during a battle that is accrued after Wukong strings together hits on enemies and after pulling off perfect dodges, in which a player dodges right before getting hit. In regards to the dodging here, players can't just spam the dodge button every which way to get out of harm's way, as after a 3rd consecutive dodge, the player will be penalized with a lengthy recovery window, opening up the player to damage. Dodging when necessary without relying on spamming it is key to getting through the game's encounters here. Getting back to focus, after the player's focus bar becomes full, players can unleash their strong attacks with the heavy attack button to inflict massive damage on enemies when the attack lands, and it is this element to the game, building up focus through standard attacks and timed dodges, and to unleash devastating strong attacks, that really sets the game apart from other action RPGs. Just like games like Sekiro is a dance of attacking along with perfect parries, so too is Black Myth Wukong, except that instead of parries, you've got perfect dodges, trying to build up focus to cash in on powerful moves to increase your odds of survival. Talking about increasing your odds of survival, upon slaying enemy and boss Yaoguai, the player is awarded Will, this game's equivalent to EXP. And upon acquiring Will, the Will bar will fill up. Once the will bar completely fills, this will net the player a resource called Spark, which is essentially a skill point. So this game's progression essentially revolves around these sparks or skill points and using them in the game's 3 extensive skill trees. The skill trees revolve around passive buffs, magic and transformations, and finally, staff and stances. These skills can be respec'd at any point, so no need to worry about having to stick with skill tree decisions that you ultimately were unhappy with. We mentioned magic and transformations being part of the skill trees, so let's dive into that, as this is an integral mechanic to Black Myth Wukong. The player is able to slot up to 4 magic spells at any given time, with many more magic spells being able to be swapped out should you so choose. The spell Immobilize is a spell that comes in clutch, as players are able to freeze enemies in place for a few seconds, allowing players to dish out some damage without the fear of being attacked in the process. While standard enemies will be frozen in place for up to a few seconds, bosses will be immobilized for just a fraction of that time, but like pretty much every aspect of this game, can be upgraded to get more potency out of the spell. In addition to Immobilize, previewers remarked about the awesome ability for Wukong to morph into a select few of the mini-boss and boss creatures to unleash havoc across the battlefield as these boss characters. While morphed into these bosses, Wukong assumes the life bar of these creatures, and should these characters' life bars become completely depleted, Wukong morphs back to himself with his life bar at the same value prior to the boss transformation. So there is definitely a lot of strategy that comes with the deployment of these magical properties. Finally, the game employs 3 stances. These stances are the Smash stance, which is the jack-of-all-trades stance, where Wukong contains both his standard light attacks with his heavy attacks being a standard heavy hit that can be worked into a combo or used on its own with enough focus. This Smash stance is the default stance and first stance introduced to players. The second stance, the Pillar stance, unlocked at level 5, is a stance where, upon holding down the heavy attack button, has Wukong perch atop his staff, with the staff growing larger and larger, hoisting Wukong higher up into the air the longer the heavy attack button is held down. This makes it so that enemies beneath Wukong are unable to hit him, getting you out of harm's way, while at the same time generating that valuable focus energy that you can spend to absolutely destroy enemies with massive thwomps of the staff. The final stance, which can be unlocked at level 20, is called the Thrust stance, with no previewers having been able to see what this stance entails. While these stances are cool and all, what makes this all the better is that players can swap between these stances on the fly in the middle of combat, allowing players that extra verticality if they so desire with the Pillar stance, and then going all out with the Smash stance for some added aggression. I really love the way this game presents itself from a combat standpoint, with the various stances, magic spells, focus mechanics, and general aggression this game has, but let me know what you think about this game's combat in the comments. Before moving on, we gotta address the gear system here in Black Myth Wukong, as the gear system here is apparently quite robust. Players will come across lots of loot here throughout the game, both in the form of items and gear, with such gear being color-coded by rarity like many RPG games. Some armor sets net bonuses to the player should the player equip the full set as well, so definitely be on the look for these bonuses when making your desired build, if you're so into that. Accessories also play a big role, like one accessory being a circlet that allows the player to use a healing gourd, this game's version of an Estus flask for example, while sprinting, giving greater utility to the utilization of the game's mechanics. Alright, so a lot of people have been talking about this game like it's a Souls-like game, but like we discussed going over the combat, this game is actually quite different in many ways. Unlike FromSoft's Soulsborne games and many other games within the genre, Black Myth Wukong players will be able to pause the game at any point, including mid-fight. On top of that, players lose only a fraction of their EXP on death, so you're still able to hold on to most of your valuable unused XP should you meet your untimely death. In addition, players can upgrade their stats at any point, even while in combat. With players able to freely reallocate skill points and respec their character, this definitely adds a layer of accessibility and impromptu customization that Souls-like games certainly don't have while in the thick of battle. In addition, the Souls-like games are known for their large, interconnected, and sprawling worlds. Black Myth Wukong, on the other hand, is confirmed to be mission-based, featuring linear levels with lots of invisible walls, with some branching pathways that can lead to secret areas that lay host to secret gear, bosses, and the like. While the developers at Game Science admittedly said that the demo at Summer Game Fest presented the game in more of a boss rush format, that the game is indeed largely linear, with some levels featuring larger areas to roam around in with NPCs, side quests, secret bosses, loot, and more. For those going into the game expecting a large, sprawling, and interconnected world, You're not going to find that here in Black Myth Wukong. What you will get is a more focused experience, largely guiding you from one bombastic set piece and boss fight to the other, in a finely crafted experience deliberately paced to hold your attention throughout an epic world chock full of boss fights, story, and RPG progression. When speaking of content, ex-user Lunatic Ignis, a known insider of this game who has a pretty spot-on track record of the details of the game thus far, stated in May that the game will contain a New Game Plus feature at launch, along with multiple endings, around 160 enemy types, and over 80 boss fights. Definitely look at this insider information with grains of salt, but considering the amount of bosses we've seen from the game thus far, along with some previewers echoing how extensive the enemy and boss diversity is, I'd go into this game thinking you are likely to get your money's worth here, with previewers stating that this is one of the better playing games of the year and a game that contains a lot of incredible quality to it. Black Myth Wukong is definitely a game that you are not going to want to miss, especially if you are a fan of action games with RPG mechanics. Personally, I've been looking forward to this game ever since I saw that initial trailer, and seeing as it's a fast-paced action RPG with Souls-like qualities, this game is very much something I cannot wait to experience. But let me know what you think about Black Myth Wukong in the comments, and definitely consider entering the giveaway if you're interested. Stay tuned for more coverage on this game as we near its release date later this summer, and I'll see you all real soon in the next one.